All right, welcome to another episode of The American Dream, the only show of its kind that goes against the grain of that negative media. We're unscripted, authentic, commercial-free, not owned by any network. So here's what you're going to see today. We've compiled interviews with some very inspirational people throughout the week to create one show airing all across the country. And don't forget, even though this is a national show, we integrate the best market experts out of your town to give you some advice on what's happening in your backyard. That being said, let's start the American Dream right now. Every single day, you are consumed with information. With the 24/7 negative news cycle and a pop culture that's polluting the airways, all selling out for the ratings game. Well, guess what? There's a more positive way to look at life. You live in the greatest city in the greatest country on the planet. Every day with our elite network of professionals, our goal is to educate, empower, and engage. And now it's time to fight for your American dream. All right, now for the word on the American Dream. Today we're going to be talking a lot about business on the show, so let's make the word about business. There's a big difference between business and busyness. You've heard me say on the show that I think it's the best opportunity in the history of mankind to aggregate attention and to build a brand online. But real business happens offline. It's a great example. Amazon, #1 retailer that doesn't have a retail shop until they do. Why? Because people, they'll make their buying decisions online, but they'll still go into a store to purchase something. The point I'm making to all of you here is that if you're starting a business and you're doing stuff online, busyness is hiding behind that computer. Business happens out there in real life. The American Dream launched in 12 cities this year. Each one of them I visited twice to make sure that as we launched our program, as we integrate in professionals who you get to see on the show, we are truly vetting the best people that we've met in person. Real business happens in person, but now is one of the greatest opportunities ever to aggregate attention online. If you can combine both those worlds, you're going to have a really successful plan. That's the word on the American Dream. Let's start the show now.
I'm Jem Morris, co-host of The American Dream. Are you interested in finance, real estate, entrepreneurship, or business? Well, you can follow us along online and watch more of our episodes.
All right, welcome back to the show. Of course, a show called The American Dream. We're going to talk a little bit about business and that entrepreneurial spirit. Joining us on the show for the first time, Ashley Stahl, business owner, multiple business owner, counter-terrorism for the Pentagon when you were 23.
Yes.
And you love cake, is what we just learned.
That's the summary. The interview over.
Interview done.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I got to ask about being in counterterrorism for the Pentagon at 23. Wow, that's incredible. Tell us about that.
Well, I think a lot of people really struggle to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And in college, we're forced to come up with a major and commit to it. And so I was always curious about cultures. I was quick to learn foreign languages. And that, to me, felt like a formula to study government. And so I ended up pursuing it all the way. And when I graduated from grad school and had a master's in war, I literally couldn't find a job.
A master's in war.
As one does.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I really struggled to find a job despite this and despite, learning Arabic and French. And I related to so many people who couldn't find a job in the recession. It was like we were lied to. We were told that if you follow what you want to do, you get a degree, you can get a job and get paid, what you're worth. And that didn't happen for me.
Sure.
So it ended up translating into me being an admin assistant, making minimum wage, and eventually just quitting my job, moving to DC with $3,000 in my bank account and networking my heart out. I think I called more than 2,000 college alumni and ended up getting multiple job interviews from that and eventually landed a position running a program for the Pentagon.
Well, now you have a couple different businesses of your own. So you've branched off, you've kind of chased the dream, and you have 2 organizations that you now run? Tell us about those.
Well, I think a lot of the time what people struggle with is trying to figure out what their purpose is. And for me, I found that purpose is often on the periphery of following what feels good. So for me, I followed government, but what was my purpose on the periphery was becoming a really amazing job seeker in a time where nobody else could get a job.
Okay.
So
that's where you developed a skill set that you ultimately turned into a product that you can now basically sell.
Yeah.
Okay, give us an example of how you'd help someone. Someone's watching right now, they're confused, they're they're finding that their American dream is not coming true. How'd you get them started?
I think the first thing that is a huge misconception is people think that what they want to do is based on an industry they want to be in. Maybe they want to work in entertainment, or they want to work in, whatever it might be. What the first thing we try to figure out is, what is the skill set, not the industry? What are they naturally good at? What is their unique brilliance? And a lot of people will have a unique brilliance, but they don't want to be practicing it in the workforce. Like for me, I love to eat, but I'm not going to go be a food critic. And I think a lot of people get a little bit confused with that. And so we really focus on, what are you good at? I have a TED Talk on this with 3 questions. What are you good at? What do people tell you you're good at? And what's holding you back? And I really try to figure out, well, what are you naturally good at? And what is everybody noticing about you? And then I, as a career expert, and so many of my coaches on my team, we use our mindset and understanding of the workforce to come up with career paths that really seem to suit that skill set, regardless of the industry that they're interested in. That comes later.
Ashley, I wish we could keep you around longer, but we
I'm
got to run
having
here.
fun. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you on again, but you got a heck of a background. Counterterrorism, entrepreneur, TED Talks. Great guest. Thank you so much for coming on The American Dream.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you can connect with Ashley online to learn more about her. More of the show coming up next.
Hey, I'm Jem Morris, co-host of The American Dream. Are you sick of the negative media? Then join the conversation online.
All right, welcome back to the show. Now, these two are living that entrepreneurial world, doing a ton of stuff online, from blogging to podcasting. We have Lauren Everett.
Yes.
Dash Bostic.
Yes.
Right, did I get that right?
You got it right.
With your hubby here, Michael Bostic. So you guys have a very popular podcast. It's called The Skinny Confidential, which you had described to me as a medley of content. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we talk about business, health, relationships, diet, filler, sex.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. Yep.
Everything.
Boob jobs.
Nothing is off limits.
Okay, so everything.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, good for you guys. You guys have had a lot of success with it. How did you get started?
So I started the blog called The Skinny Confidential when I was attending San Diego State 7 years ago. Him and I were dating, weren't engaged yet, and the blog was something I did every day, 7 days a week for 7 years up to now.
So I was running my own businesses and she was doing the blog, and we were getting so many questions to her social channels and my social channels, and we said, okay, how do we figure out a way to stop responding on an individual level and give answers on a massive level. So we said, okay, what's the best way to do that? What's the most effective and cheapest way to do that? And we said, okay, a podcast, because you can self-produce it, you can put it out, you can reach multiple platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or SoundCloud. And so we said, okay, let's start a podcast. And originally it started by taking listener questions and reader questions at the time.
Sure.
And picking the best ones out and then answering them. And since then it's evolved into different interviews, and we've had different guests on and different topics, and definitely has run the gauntlet of topics at this point.
So this has become a great space. It's very opportunistic. I think it's the greatest time in the history of marketers to aggregate attention, build a brand, but it's also really noisy. There's a lot of people saying to do this. There's a lot of people doing it. I mean, how many life coaches are there now? They're like 25, right?
Yeah, the 25-year-old life coach.
Right. So, teach about life. But, you get a lot of that. How do you separate yourself from the noise and the people that are doing, there's a difference between business and busyness. How do you separate and make it a real business model?
So for how I stood out was I am really unapologetically myself. Like I think that the way I write is the way I talk, and I think that's been a big help in how I've stood out in this industry. I also think that I came in wanting to collaborate with other people as opposed to compete. So what I did to grow The Skinny Confidential and Growth Hack It was team up with other models or actresses or people that already had these platforms, showcase them on The Skinny Confidential, which is a super beautiful pink girly site. And from there, they wanted to promote the interview. So it was a win-win for everyone. I think that if you're starting out now, it's a different time now than when I was starting out 7 years ago. I think it's really important to find your niche. And when I say that, I mean such a niche. So I always say this, I say, it's so niche that you almost have to create an Instagram account called @thattargetgirl. And I say this to my audience all the time. That's someone that is living, eating, breathing everything from Target. So they just showcase Target, and what ends up happening with that is you stand out through all the other fashion bloggers. Target notices you. You can end up getting partnerships, sponsorships with Target, and then from there, eventually, hopefully, the end goal would be a product line with Target.
Wow.
So you really have to think far in the future, but also with niche.
So you've been doing it 7 years, which is a good runway for people just getting into it now. Michael, you've kind of been more involved on like real offline business and brought it in. How would you say to separate yourself?
So I think the most important thing, and I think this is true for business as well, is when you're starting out anything, I think you have to really pick a customer and have that single, customer in mind and really niche down for that person. And then as you move forward, obviously you're going to add more people to your idea, but it's important to not try to service everybody from the beginning, because when you try to capture everybody in the beginning, you end up getting nobody. So I think where I see people making a mistake in the online space or even in the business arena is they say, okay, I'm going to launch this and it's going to reach everybody.
Right.
When if you really study the most successful businesses and platforms, they launch and they really had someone specific in mind. This applies to creative spaces too, where I've heard like authors say, when you write a book, write it for 1 or 2 people. Mm-hmm. And that way you're not so focused on so many other people and so many opinions, it's not going to sway you in one way or the other. You're going to be able to be hyper-focused. And from there, you're going to build word of mouth. If you get a real true fan, they're going to do a lot of the marketing for you. And I think if you kind of have somebody that's like, I kind of like this thing,
sure,
kind of not, they're not really going to be enthusiastic. So you want to, there's a book by Seth Godin called Purple Cow. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's a great book. And he says you have to be remarkable. And meaning someone's going to remark on you. And to do that, you have to be unapologetically yourself, really be different, stand out, niche down, and I think from there you can expand.
Awesome. Lauren and Michael, thank you so much for coming on The American Dream and inspiring us a little bit.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. Hope you can check these guys out. The Skinny Confidential is their podcast. Be remarkable. That was a good one. More of the show coming up next.
Hi, I'm Jem Morris, co-host of The American Dream. Don't forget, you can always watch more of our content online and follow us along on social media.
All right, welcome back to the show. Let's keep talking about business. Joining us now, Matt Geller. You are the owner, CEO of Covalent Careers. We're going to talk a little bit today about startup, marketing, all the things you have going on. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Craig. Appreciate it.
All right, man. So, entrepreneur, tell us about when you started.
Yeah, it all started back in 2009. So I was going to optometry school, wanted to become an optometry doctor, and just knew there was no way I was going through 4 years of school doing what everyone else was doing. So started a website, optometrystudents.com. A year later, it was acquired by the American Optometric Association. And so I went on to just do a lot more business for 4 years straight, building this website up. Graduated in 2013 and just said, there's no way I'm stopping doing this online publishing type of thing. So started newgradoptometry.com, site for new graduates, content for new graduates.
Okay.
And it's now one of the largest eye care websites, in the profession. And
wow.
So what we learned from that was a big market need around healthcare staffing, especially for this young healthcare professional generation. And so we started a new platform, CovalentCareers.com, which is a career development platform for new healthcare professionals where you can find education, mentorship, and job opportunities all within one platform. And so now we're solving that need not in eye care, but also in allied health. So that's PT, OT, speech, et cetera, and onwards with the expansion.
Wow. So you're taking advantage of this online space. Let's talk about that for a moment, because I think, and I've said this before, it's the greatest opportunity in the history of mankind and marketers to aggregate attention, build a brand. You veered off from, that career path with doctors, lawyers, optometry. I mean, you pay all this money to then ultimately be in the space, and then you veer off into this kind of online world. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, and it's definitely a big sacrifice to go this route. You have to sacrifice and, potentially burn bridges to safety. So when I was leaving optometry, great 6-figure job, security, it's not going anywhere, and then saying, you know what, I'm gonna get paid nothing to go and do this. That's a leap of faith, but you're right. The online channels, the online market, this younger millennial generation has never had kind of this layup to enter this space. And there's tools available for them, and I think a lot of people are taking advantage of it. It's very exciting.
It's also challenging, right? You have to have a certain type of genetic makeup, I think, nature versus nurture. I mean, I don't know which side of the argument it's on, but you have to be super ambitious to have success, whether it's that online or offline world. Would you agree that, and you don't have to, but that a lot of people are chasing that online dream, but not actually putting in the work. I mean, the things that you've done with Covalent Career and everything leading up, I mean, you're right. You burned the bridge. You took huge risk, and I'm sure coming out of optometry school, you had debt.
Absolutely,
I mean,
still do.
so everything you did was very high risk, but ultimately can be high reward. How do we combat the high risk? How do you coach people on that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think for one, the sacrifice component is there, and ideas are a dime a dozen. A lot of people have ideas, and it's like, I could do this, I can do that. Ideas don't matter. It's executing on those ideas. It's having the courage to make the right decisions, and have a decision-making process where you mitigate that downside risk. And so ultimately, for people who are kind of on the fence, should I go, should I do it, I'd really just say, what is your plan? What are your goals? What does that execution strategy look like? And the more information you have and the ability to stress test those ideas with other believable people can enable one to take the jump. And so what I mean by that is passing those great ideas. Say like someone wants to get into media, doing what you're doing. You're a believable person there. They should be passing their plans on to you saying, is this an accurate plan? Am I calculating this correctly? And if so, if you stress test those ideas, making that jump becomes far easier. Certainly hardship along the way, but you've got to stress test.
Now, am I connecting the dots a bit on what you're doing here at Covalent Careers?
Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
So explain real quickly what exactly you guys do. If someone wants to connect with you online, learn more, what are they going to find?
Yeah, so Covalent Careers, individuals can create a profile or visit one of our educational sites, a variety of educational sites that we teach these fundamental lessons and ultimately find jobs. But it's through that process of educating correctly and then finding that correct position that you'll ultimately find career and workplace happiness. That's what we're aiming for.
Awesome, man. Well, you've walked the walk, right? You don't just talk the talk. I mean, you've actually done this yourself. Now you're leading this Covalent Careers. I hope our audience will connect with you and learn more.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Appreciate
it.
it.
Show. Ideas are easy, execution, whole different ball game. More of the American Dream coming up next. Well, as you know, the American Dream is a national program where we focus on business, the entrepreneurial spirit, overcoming adversity, finance, the market, all things that are relevant to empowering your American Dream. But a big topic of conversation on this show is housing. So what we do is we integrate local, top-producing, award-winning realtors to cover a wide range of topics on that subject, different micro markets, different niche subject matter. Housing is such a big topic, so we're going to bring you a lot of information right now from some of the best in your market. Let's check out these interviews.
And now we take you over to Nashville, where we have one of the top performing realtors and a leading relocation specialist, Miss Jacey Cook, who is with the Crye-Leike Realtors. Jacey, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, Sarah, it's great to be here.
So I understand Nashville's in a really hot market. I think top 5, is that about right?
Yeah, I think even when we've dropped out of the top 5, it still remains in the top 10. We have a ton of businesses moving here, and the city's giving incentives for them to continue doing so. So it's an awesome place to be.
Nice. Seems like a big boom for Nashville. As far as somebody looking to buy a home, though, are the prices surging because of this? And what do they say to you if they're interested in buying now but might be hesitant due to the prices?
Yes, one of the biggest questions that everyone asks me, from friends to clients, anyone that finds out that I'm a realtor, is, well, how do I feel about buying right now? Is the market at its peak, and is it a good investment to do so? But the reality is yes, our inventory is low, and that's driven prices up to a certain extent. But interest rates are still very low. Even with the recent increase that we just had, they're still in the low 4s, which makes it a great time to buy. And the latest news that we heard is we're still possibly in contention for a new hub of Amazon. So if that happens, then that's going to bring another couple thousand people to our city. So I don't really know that the prices are going to lower or regulate within the next couple of years. So with interest rates being low, it still is a great time to buy.
So Jacey, what is the most important thing that somebody can do to get their property bought or sold?
Well, believe it or not, it's not something that they can do or a fact. It is all about emotion. So most people, they have a goal. They find a house, they want to buy it. They have a house, they want to sell it. But it's one of the biggest purchases or decisions that they make in their life, and it's a really serious one. But, keeping emotion out of the deal and focusing on the end goal is super important. And, it's my job as a realtor to make sure that my clients keep emotion out, and that on the other end, the other agent and the other couple, keeps emotion out, because really keeping calm, focusing on the goals can really seal a deal, or it can make or break a deal. You don't want it ever to turn into a win-lose situation. You want to keep the focus on, achieving the purchase and getting their dream house, or selling their house and moving on. But emotion, it's a crazy thing, and it's easy for it to overtake a transaction.
Now, what if somebody wants to move, but their house isn't really in the best shape? What are their options to sell? And I know that that's another question that you get quite often, too.
Again, it just kind of depends on price point and area. Right now, if it's below that $450 mark, it's probably going to go quicker than others. But, I like to say a tough house is a tough house no matter what. So if you have a lot that's tricky to get in and out of, or you have a floor plan that's very choppy, that's not going to change the circumstances. So being realistic on what you can get for your house. I mean, even in the hottest of markets, a tough house is going to sell slower than a house that's a dream house. But really being a realist, because right now everyone just hears that our market is hot, 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 and that's not the case in every house.
Okay, so it's maybe a little bit across the board, but in individual circumstances might not be the case. Jacey Cook, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and giving us a little education on what's happening in the Nashville market. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll see you next month.
Sounds good. And with that, we're going to break. We'll be right back.
With low inventory and prices going up, how do you accurately price a home to take it to market, get top dollar, and sell it quickly? Joining us on the show right now, he's an award-winning realtor, Bruce Jones. Bruce, good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Craig. Good to be here.
So that's really an interesting topic. Of course, every seller wants to sell their home higher than maybe what's even realistic, because that's where they make their money on the equity. But how do you accurately, as a realtor, price that property?
Nowadays, a lot of people have a lot of information online they're looking at, and I'd say almost every time I walk into someone's house, they have the opinion that their house is better than everyone else's. It's kind of funny, but I do like to ask them what makes their house special to them, so that helps me on the selling point of that. But every house is different. Every lot's different. It's like, does it back up to railroad tracks? Does it back up to other houses, or does it back up to a farm? There's so many different components there that people are not really thinking about too much when they're looking at Zillow numbers and things like that.
Well, the online sources, we live in this digital world where there's a lot of great information, access on your iPhone, but isn't a lot of that stuff inaccurate? Doesn't it mislead people?
Yeah, it really is. Things like, usually the online, they're pulling data from tax records, which are usually not correct on square footage. And I was like, they assume every lot's the same. They assume that all finishes are the same, all smells are the same of the house. I'm going through a similar situation on a house I have out of state, pricing it, and it needs some work. Well, do I list it as is, or does it make sense to go ahead and spend the money on doing those improvements, and what does it net me in terms of a rate of return of what I spend on the improvements?
So how do you identify that price? What's the piece of advice?
Well, it's like I think first and foremost with anyone, it's like you need to get a seasoned agent to come in there and look at things and have an honest conversation with them about what's really going on with the house, what's the pluses and minuses. Is the master bedroom upstairs? Is it downstairs? And it's like a downstairs bedroom, master bedroom would be a marketable thing for most anyone. Like anyone with knee problems, hip problems, or older people. And it's like, but sometimes the master bedrooms for a younger couple, they want it up there with the rest of the kids and things like that's a big selling point there. It kind of depends on the community itself. If they kind of screams young families, that's probably a good selling point there. But if it's kind of an older community and everything's like, it's probably going to be a negative.
With some of the new
I'll
buildings,
tell you too, on the large homes, things like we get into these houses, 8,000, 9,000 square feet homes, your things like with 3 levels, an elevator is a big selling point there.
I wanted to ask you about new construction. With new development happening in Nashville, again, this low inventory thing, how do you look at new construction and find the right price point there?
Well, of course, we look at what our competition is. I'm involved with several projects in town right now, and we've got 2 coming to the market next week. And like they'll be $1,275,000 each. And like I say, they're same style of homes and things like, but they were in a very good zip code. But I actually invited several other agents over, and I said to look at it, and I said, give me your opinion before we actually go on the market. And I was like, I already knew what we were thinking, but I needed to kind of hear from them. And I just said, just good, bad, and different. Tell me the pluses and minuses of things. So it's not a bad thing. And you know, I'll do the same for other agents. We'll help each other out on things like that. Now, on new construction, the builder too has, of course, what it costs to build it, and then kind of what they're set for and what their target is on their profits. So that's a big factor there.
Yeah, I think a big takeaway here, Bruce, is that with people being able to find so much information online, a lot of that, unfortunately, is misinformation. I've been doing this real estate thing for a long time, and having someone who's an expert in a micro market, knows areas, certainly niche advice as well when you're talking about things like new construction is really, really important. I know you're well known for all of this in Nashville. Appreciate you coming on The American Dream and sharing some knowledge with us.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Have a good week.
All right, Bruce Jones, one of the best in the business. Connect with him online if you're looking to buy or sell. My highest recommendation there. Coming up next, we're going to go into some luxury real estate investing advice next on The American Dream. You just heard from award-winning realtors about your marketplace. It's one thing to find your dream home. It's another thing to finance it. I've traveled the country to find the best mortgage experts in every city. You're going to hear from yours in a Mortgage Minute right now. Let's check it out.
Lawson Hardwick here with Churchill Mortgage. I'd like to shift to a very big pain point in Middle Tennessee right now. Homebuyers are struggling in this housing market. Inventory is low and competition is very high. Most homebuyers think that by getting a pre-approval, they're giving themselves a leg up in the home buying process. Quite frankly, that's not good enough anymore. Churchill Mortgage offers the Certified Homebuyer Program, which positions you almost as if you're a cash buyer. Our program makes you more attractive to home sellers and often moves your offer to the front of the line. It is the next best thing to a cash offer. Not only does this help you shop with more confidence, but it can oftentimes mean your offer being accepted more quickly. If you're searching for a home, go to churchillmortgage.com today.
All right, that's all for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, our goal with every program is to educate, empower, and engage your American dream. Don't forget to follow us online and join us next week for another episode. See you next time.